I'm Rob Licuria, Senior Editor at the Gold Derby, here with Amber Midthunder. Amber, after you were cast in the role of Naru and you initially knew that this was going to be an action adventure about a Comanche woman, what was your initial reaction when you then realized it's also a Predator prequel?
Um, well, I feel like it's out there, so I'm not sure if you've heard, but my immediate reaction was tears. um, Not happy ones, anxious ones. Yeah, I found out before I was cast that, it was a Predator film. I mean, I initially found out about the movie, I think early 2020. So, it was it was over a year until we like did the final audition. I was cast because of COVID and everything. So um really all that I knew about it originally was that it was a story about, a young Comanche woman who wanted to be a warrior. And I didn't know that it was Predator related at all. I knew that character and Dan, and that was basically it. And, I was really compelled by those things. I really connected with the character, and I thought that, you know, I had really short audition scenes, but there was something in it that really like sparked just like something inside me. And then when I met Dan and I got to sit down with him, that was like, we just developed this connection right away and this kind of shorthand. And that was like that. I think as an actress, that's what you hope for.
Mhm. Absolutely. And those anxious tears, was there a worry that maybe it wasn't the kind of film for you, or you weren't sure about the whole Predator franchise? What was going on in your mind?
I think it was just the responsibility of the movie. Like, as for me, I've never been the lead of a franchise film before, so that was obviously a big deal. But more than anything, it was like the cultural aspect, that like merging the two identities together. I think I realized that that was an opportunity either to do something really big or to mess up really big. Um, and that was really intimidating to me. And I think I was just afraid of having that responsibility. And not knowing, I think then that opened up a world of a lot of questions that then I had, and not knowing what that would mean and what that would lead to, and where Dan's head was at. And at that time I didn't know that Jane Myers was producing, so I didn't know who else
Yeah,
there was to lean on. So it was a lot. I think it was a lot of that stuff too.
that makes a lot of sense. And when Dan explains it, he just saw this opportunity to do something so different and unique, and to elevate a culture that we don't often see in film and TV. And then also have, the underdog be a woman, who a fledgling, a woman who's still learning how to be a hunter. It's just so genius. And I'm so happy that it turned out so beautifully. So what does it mean to you, I guess, personally and professionally, to have the story of this, big budget Predator prequel set in 1719 with a Comanche woman at the center?
I think it's a brilliant idea. I think that it is genius. And I think the movie speaks for itself in saying that, like, I don't think that there's any other way that it could have been done as beautifully as it was. I think that, being able to show who Comanche people were at that time, and Native people in general, that we're intelligent and innovative, and have this opportunity to represent us in ways that we have not previously had the opportunity of being represented.
Yeah.
um, and then also to take all of the strengths that Comanche people offer and put that in the Predator world is something that the Predator universe has never seen. So I think it was this like amazing ability to blend these two spaces that you would not think are connected, and then do something that nobody expects.
Yeah, and this death match between the alien and Naru is so beautifully staged, and the odds are so stacked against her, to the point where the film keeps upping the ante. And there were moments where I genuinely thought, I don't know if she's going to get through this. Like, how is she going to do this? And then, so what are your thoughts on that profound contrast between these two ultimate fighters and playing the ultimate underdog?
Yeah. Oh, that's a cool way to say it. Um, I mean, I think that, that's kind of the thing about the story, is that she's not really an ultimate fighter. Like, you don't expect that from her. And, so much of even what Dan and I would see on the internet, while we were shooting, it's like, that's what everybody had to say about it, was like, well, how is this even going to be possible? How does this make sense? How does that work? How is she supposed to do this? And it's like all of the things that, ended up making her strong are the things that you think are her disadvantages at some point. And that's why I think this story is so different from the other movies in the franchise. And that's why this story is compelling in general, I think, is that, it's not somebody necessarily that you would expect to be able to be the hero or to be the ultimate fighter. But she ends up being exactly that.
You know how you often hear about action films and I know that war films and sci-fi films that the actors get together in a boot camp. I know you guys did the same thing for a few weeks prior to production, and you often hear, "Oh yeah, it was really hard and we all bonded," and that's all great. But is there any particular story that you can recall from that boot camp that you will always think back on when you think back on those times?
Oh man, that actually is a question I have not been asked.
Oh.
I think. Honestly, I just remember, I think like by the end of it, I do remember that there's, oh my God, so many things are like coming into my mind.
Tell me everything.
There's just you just opened up like a whole world of things.
Wow.
I mean, it's hard to pick out a specific memory. I mean, I think I just remember it like days when it felt like it was a circus. Like, I think coming in, and it was maybe like towards the end that everybody was there, and it was like we had like the stunt team rehearsing fights on the mats. We had we're like, me and the boys would be doing like weapons training, like kind of like on the far end of the warehouse. And then we had like, the stunt coordinator was like, I don't know, figuring something out on like his laptop. So there was like a little desk space, and then the dog was also there. So then it was like the dog trainers were in another area, and there was like an upstairs where some of the boys would play hockey. And it's like, there's just this big, literally just this big warehouse of like crazy magical things happening all at one time. And I think just like the experience of like walking in there in the morning and seeing all that happening is something that I'll never forget.
Wow, that sounds so cool, I have to say. Oh, yeah, I would have loved that. So, a lot of the effects, particularly the Predator, were practical in camera, right? Which is awesome. It's not completely CGI, which I think a lot of us fans really, really loved and responded to. As it's an obvious question, as it might sound, but I'm curious how that enhances your performance rather than have to play to a green screen all the time.
I mean, I feel very fortunate that, I didn't have to, I mean, I can't even fully answer that because I didn't have to do any green screen at all. I mean, I think that it depends on the moment, but I just feel very fortunate more than anything that we got to be like in the elements, like not just having, the Predator in front of me, but also the environment of where we were was always so distinct and so real. We shot all around Calgary, and it was really special for me because we shot on Stony Nakota Reserve land for much of the movie, and I'm also Nakota. So, to be on a land that is like similar to my people was really special. And also just to like, I mean, like the mud pit was practical. So like that, that was like, I was actually just crawling through a mud pit and trying to get out. Like Dan just left me there with cameras, and he was like, all right, figure it out, get out of there. So it's like so much of that was, like I feel just fortunate that, we were, I mean, the bear scene, like that actually was funny because there was a guy in a bear suit. And it was not like the best bear suit I've ever seen in my life. So that was a little bit silly. But like, even being like out on the river and all these, when I was like running and diving into the river, it's like all those things were real. So I just feel fortunate that we had the bigger space available, because I think when you're on location like that, there's nothing about that you can ignore. You can't like, you have no choice other than to make your environment a part of the narrative and a part of, to me, what I'm doing, because there's just no other option. So I think that is like a huge part of the DNA of the movie without even knowing it.
Yeah. And without me sounding cliched or like silly, a lot of the film we experience through your eyes and your facial expressions. Obviously, there was a choice made during post-production not to make so much dialogue and make more less dialogue, I guess. And so with you being able to react to things in camera, I'm curious if that was really playing on your mind to really hone in on your facial expressions, your inflections, your eyes. Was that something that you really worked on?
I don't know if I worked on it, but I did think about it a lot. I mean, I'm naturally a very expressive person with my face. I'm very animated. That's like the joke in my family is like, oh, you have such a loud face. Like you can never hide what you're thinking. So, I mean, fortunately / unfortunately, that's just me. But also, I mean, I remember there was a day where when the predator walks through the trapper camp, like after after my fight sequence with the trappers, I'm hiding behind the tree with the gun and he walks behind me. And we did that whole scene and I didn't say anything. And I remember thinking to myself, like, did I just do anything interesting at all? Like, I remember being like, what did I just do? And what did that look like? Because I felt like I was just sitting there. Like, I remember thinking, like, okay, the big monster behind me and it's scary and all this stuff. And I was like, man, I feel scared, but like, I don't know if any of that is reading. I was like, I hope this works. I hope this movie works. But I watched it later and I was like, okay, she did okay. She's doing all right.
Yeah. I reckon you killed it. No pun intended, or pun intended if you wish. I speaking of the mud scene, you kind of preempted that now, but I love that scene so much. I've seen it so many times, and I just wondered, like, were they in a tank? Was there the fake mud? And getting that axe on the thing, it's just so well edited and shot and performed. Like, what was going on? Was that a whole day of just being in dirt?
Oh, I wish it was one day. We shot that for 5 days. You would think, why do you have to shoot that for 5 days? And I will tell you, I did ask myself that many times. But lots of Dan is a very thorough person. And it did turn out great. So no faults. But yeah, it was crazy. I don't know what they made the mud out of. Would not recommend it to anybody. It first of all was quite smelly. I was like, oh, is this just like manure mixed with water? Cute. But but yeah, I mean, it was like we did that for 5 days and it was like I had like a wetsuit on underneath my regular clothes. And we only had one chance. I think part of the reason that we had to do it for 5 days, we only had one chance for me to go in the mud the first time, right? So we really only had 5 takes for me to like get in there. And then after that I was in. So it was a lot of like, okay, you go in there and then you land and you're like waist high. So we're going to try to shoot at that level. And it was like the deeper I got, that's where we were. And no, that was just like out in the middle of the woods. They'd put like a big board over it so nobody would fall in when I wasn't in there. And yeah, and we had like I had the tomahawk and there was a little back of the tree and I would literally just throw it and he'd be like, all right, miss it, and then now try to get it in there this time. And sometimes I'd do it and it wouldn't catch. And so he's like, all right, make it catch this time. So I'd throw it and I just had to see if it would come back to me. And eventually it would catch. And then that's when I would try to hoist myself out. And then I stood in it had like a horse trough inside of a tent that I would stand in. And, the really sweet like women who took care of me, my like wardrobe ladies, my like hair and makeup ladies, they would like hose me down with warm water. And that was how I cleaned up.
Wow. I just imagine like by day 3, you're getting out of bed, you're getting ready to get on set. You're like, yeah, all right, we have another mud day today.
Yeah.
Myself together. But that sounds awesome. And I'm thinking there could be some like future career for you in the Olympics for like throwing whatever that thing is in the big sports. Just keep in mind.
I'm good to watch from now on. I think I've retired my career.
Okay, good. You gave it a go. We can say you gave it.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm a bit of a nerd for Dan Trachtenberg, right? I just love everything he's done for years and years when he was a podcaster and now he's a filmmaker. He brings a real thoughtfulness and intimacy to the character work on this show, which is no surprise. What do you most value about working with him?
Oh, I love this question. I think Dan, I mean, there's a lot of, I truly love Dan with like all my heart. think there's so many valuable things about him as a collaborator and a filmmaker. But I would say, I think his ability, I think there's two things, if I had to highlight them, secretly three, but I'll leave it at two.
Okay.
That he has this amazing ability to, keep the whole story inside of his brain at one time and zoom in on any particular piece of it that he wants to. So like, I was talking about how the environment was such a big part of the experience of making the movie. It's so stimulating that I think the ability to like ground yourself can sometimes be I found it to be a little bit difficult in like the narrative, where I was just experiencing so much and I was so stimulated that you have to think, oh, am I channeling that in the right way, right? And Dan never ceased to be that anchor of making sure that we were like dialed into exactly the right thing at exactly the right moment at any given time and any given point of the story. So there's that. And also I think his ability to collaborate, I mean, he's an incredible collaborator, and I've truly never seen somebody, hold space for anybody's idea, and think it through, and then be able to, kind of fold those in together, and at the same time, like I said, like hold the whole story. So I think his just, I don't know what his IQ is, but it's probably high.
Really high. I get
Yeah.
the sense. What is that the secret one as well, or is that still going to stay a secret?
Oh, the third one is just that he's like a really good person.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with that. It's just that he's like, he's like a really good guy, and we like that.
Yeah, I'm a fan of people who are nice and just
right.
easy. Yeah, that's all plus.
Not all the directors are nice out there, and he's like a really nice one.
It's like a football coach. Sometimes they're really mean and they think they can get the best out of you that way. I just always find the ones that are really cool and easy and like on your same page, you can get the best performances out of people.
Yeah.
So, Dan,
that's his method.
Yeah. So you scored a Critics' Choice nomination. So did the film, actually. The film's on 93% of Rotten Tomatoes. Like, it's done really well. The critics love it, fans love it. How have you been happy with the critical and fan response to the film and your performance?
Yeah, I mean, I think was surprised. Not that I had bad expectations. I just don't think I thought about expecting. I just didn't have expectations, I think, for what people would think or how that would go. I definitely did not expect any nominations or anything like that. I really was not thinking that at all in my mind, because I think, you don't expect it for like a Predator movie, but also, it just was, I think, when you're like 4.5 months deep into like being in the Calgary forest every day, you're not thinking like, I wonder if someday I'll go to the Critics' Choice Awards. You're just, trying to survive what is happening in front of you. So I did think about like hoping to do something that would be meaningful to like Native people and Indigenous communities in the Comanche Nation. And that was like a really big, part of the film. I think we probably talked about that every single day. So that I did really care about, Jane and I and Dan and all of us, the boys and everybody, we would all talk about that. And I think that's been the most rewarding part of it, to me, honestly, is having it be something that, other Native people and other Native women are proud of, and like seeing like little Native girls dress up like Naru and like stuff like that. Like, I think that's the stuff that really makes me emotional and that I'm really happy about.
Yeah, it's such a great legacy for the film to have now going forward. There's been so much wonderful representation by Native Americans on TV this season, and you're absolutely a part of that. And Amber, thank you so much for your time today. Congratulations on a beautiful performance.
Thank you.